Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Welcome back, you ungovernable fucks. I've got a great one for you today. If you are looking to increase your privacy, I think there's no one better than Samourai Wallet. I had him on to discuss some of the hints him and TDev have been making about decentralizing Whirlpool further, and we talked about paynym payouts, BIP47, the new Straylight team announcement, and what this means for decentralizing Whirlpool. It's always great to catch up with Samourai Wallet, and I love that there's a team out there who will not comply. I won't go into too much more detail about what we discussed because you're going to hear it anyway. Before we start the show, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been boosting on Fountain, streaming us sats. I really do appreciate it, and it's so cool to see the show in the top 10 again. So thank you so much for that. If anyone has any more questions or questions about this show, you can reach out to me. I know a lot of the people who are going to listen to this, a lot of the privacy guys, you do not like Lightning. So you're probably not going to do it. If you like the show and you want to stream me some sats but you do not like Lightning, well, guess what? You can send some to my paynym. It's Max by Bit. Any sats would be very much appreciated, and they will go back into pushing this show out to more listeners, trying to get people to care about their privacy and get them away from all the bullshit. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to Foundation Devices. Foundation Devices have been sponsoring this show, allowing it to continue, and at the same time making the most beautiful hardware out there. Not only is it beautifully designed, but it's fully open source, and they are a team that really care about privacy and security. We might have dropped a couple of hints at things that may be to come in this episode, so listen out for that. And if you haven't already checked them out, go to foundationdevices.com and use the code BITBYBIT for a discount. Enjoy the show. Well, welcome back to the show, mate. I feel this has been long overdue.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to be back. It's been, about a year? A little longer?
I think so, yeah, might even be longer. And I keep getting told off by all the listeners, getting little messages saying, when Privacy Pod, you're talking too much about mining. So here we are.
Oh, okay. All right. Mining's a good thing to talk about, though. That's cool.
We've been leaning into it quite a lot, just trying to get like more home miners, and a lot of the privacy guys, there's like a overlap.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to sort of fill that, and yeah, there's been a lot of focus on that. And I got Mehdi from Lincoinpool as a sponsor for one of the shows. I know he's been sort of leaning in and working on BIP47 and getting that integrated for people. Yep. So it's definitely a crossover, which is cool.
Yeah, there's a huge crossover there. There was, I think, Diverter from our community can be kind of credited with bringing home mining back in vogue with his guide that he wrote that inspired Econo Alchemist, who then wrote his own guide, and it's kind of been like, just going from there, and it's great to see.
Yeah, it's massive. The only frustrating thing about running a mining pod when you live in the UK is you feel a bit out of the loop, because at like 35p a kilowatt hour, you're like, fuck this. This just makes makes no sense.
Not cheap at all.
So, lots to talk about Samourai-wise. There's a few tweets that have been coming out recently I've had my eye on, both from you and from TDev. And it looks pretty exciting. Like the Straylight thing, the fact that potentially we're going to have more coordinators coming online. It looks pretty interesting to me, but it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective, like what's that process been like and how close are we to having more coordinators outside of Sparrow?
Well, Sparrow isn't a coordinator. Sparrow is just a client, though we are working on...
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, no. We are working on multiple... we're working on decentralizing the coordination. Right now, one of the quote-unquote weak points of Whirlpool is that, if something happens to us, Samourai developers, if we get raided, if we don't pay our bills, if we... whatever the case, and our coordination server goes down, then Whirlpool kind of stops. And we view that as a risk, right? There's no risk to funds and there's no risk to you losing your Bitcoin. There's no risk to any of that. But the actual Whirlpool service as itself would be over if we didn't exist. And we want to get rid of that as a limitation. And one of the ways to do that is to decentralize the coordinator so that it's not only relying on us Samourai developers to run this server, but anyone can run a server. And the trick is to do that in a way that doesn't split liquidity up. Because the most important part of a coin join implementation is liquidity pool. And that's what Whirlpool has that really no other coin join implementation has, is a structured liquidity pool. So how do we decentralize without cannibalizing? It has been the name of the game for the last several months. We've made very good progress development-wise, and users should start seeing things that kind of move towards that end goal, really soon. The first thing that you'll note is Soroban is getting decentralized. And if your listeners don't know, Soroban is a communication layer that allows you to make collaborative transactions such as Stonewall X2 or Stowaway with another user without going through a coordination server like Whirlpool. You can just do it peer-to-peer. Soroban is the encrypted kind of chat layer or communication layer that operates over. Again, currently there's one relay run by us, but really what we would like is thousands of relays run by everyone. So it's not reliant on us. So you'll see decentralized Soroban coming out really soon. And from there, following on, you'll see decentralized Whirlpool coordination coming out.
That's really interesting. Like you say, it's kind of like a pain point or like a central point where you could potentially have a problem. And the fact you have that one pool, though, is the massive thing. That's why it's so exciting when you see like Craig jump on board. And yes. I know I've had whispers from some other people, but I won't say until they go any further. But it's very exciting to see that, because that really does decentralize things out. And I think a lot of the concerns and the people who are screaming on Twitter, it's like, well, what's the fucking problem now then?
Oh, well, they'll figure out a new problem, but they don't matter. The people screaming on Twitter live really sad lives, and they just simply don't matter. They don't transact. They don't use our stuff. They're not going to. So it's not worth even thinking about them. They're concerned trolls. We look at our architecture. We look at our stack, and we look at ways to make it more robust. It's not gonna come out immaculately conceived, so to speak, perfect. We're gonna look at everything and say, well, here are the, Whirlpool. Okay, it's great. There is blinding on the server. There's all this stuff. Makes it safe for you to use with or without a dojo. However, what happens if we go down, right? What happens if the regulatory landscape changes and it's illegal for us to run a server? What happens if, like I said, we just forget to pay our bills? What happens in all these different circumstances? And we want to mitigate against us going down. We want Whirlpool to still work if we have to stop developing it. We have no plans on stopping. We are all in on this, but making it more robust to those kinds of unforeseen events, I think is the sign of a mature protocol, and a protocol that's evolving and getting stronger. We saw it with, as you mentioned, with Craig and Sparrow Wallet, implementing Whirlpool into Sparrow Wallet. That was huge. Now, he's not a coordinator, but he's a completely independent client accessing that coordinator, right? And that is great for all Whirlpool users because it introduces new liquidity into the pools that have nothing to do with Samourai.
So that I get my vernacular right. So you're the coordinator currently, but you're looking at decentralizing that. You've then got
Right.
Craig coming on as the first other client,
Yeah.
but you can have presumably an unlimited amount of clients who can come on
Yes.
board. So it was maybe a bit of a hint in our Bitcoin Monthly, but I know Q&A is looking at maybe a way to do something because of this Straylight Whirlpool client written in Rust. And from my understanding, that could maybe mean that Foundation could do something.
Yeah.
But I'll obviously let him speak on that a bit more. But so in theory, you could have someone like Foundation come in as well, and then you're all in the same pool, but you're still the coordinator. But what you're saying is you could also make it that coordination process is decentralized so that you're not this central point of failure.
Correct.
Which then is very interesting because it's like, it's hard to then think of a way to attack it. It becomes more and more difficult to attack it, and you've got more and more liquidity coming in. Is this something like when you sat down and you're sort of designing this right in the beginning, is this something you had planned for and thought out in terms of, right, this is what we can do today, but this is where we want to go? Or is it something that's kind of natural? It was, okay.
Yeah, absolutely was. So when we started designing Whirlpool in around 2015, basically when we started Samourai Wallet. And at that time, Join Market just came on the scene. So Join Market was brand new. And what Join Market did that was very clever and different was decentralized coordination. However, the way it was done, just because of the time it was done, it was so early, was less than ideal that we could see, right? So the way it was done in 2015 on Join Market was coordination via IRC server. And IRC server is, none of your listeners, unless they're really nerdy, are going to even know what that is. It was a way of chatting on the internet back then.
So like internet relay something? Or?
Yeah, internet relay chat. And if you were a nerd like I was, you spent a hell of a lot of time in IRC. And using IRC as a coordination method, while incredibly clever, comes with its own challenges in terms of reliability and scalability. So we looked at that and said, damn, that's really clever. However, it's not going to scale, and it's certainly not going to scale on a mobile app in 2015. So we designed it more traditionally in terms of a client-server approach, which is how Samourai is built and designed because it's way more performant on mobile, with the understanding that we need to find a way to blind the server so that the server doesn't know inputs to outputs. Otherwise, it'd be a pointless thing. And provided we can do that, which obviously we did, we can put off the decentralization side of things, right? So we can bootstrap it as it is with a centralized coordinator because the coordinator doesn't know what it's, doesn't read the messages that it's passing. It can't read the messages that it's passing. So we're okay with that. And then figure out, once we know this thing has legs, once we know it's going to work, figure out how to de-risk and bring about the decentralization of the coordination. So yeah, it was planned, and we've been thinking about it for a long time. Then the Tornado Cash incident happened, where the developer of Tornado Cash was arrested. T-Dev and myself were talking and saying, look, this has been in the works for a while, and I think we need to prioritize getting this out the door and ready because the environment and the climate is shifting. As these protocols and these tools actually get use and become successful, a whole new level of scrutiny is going to come down on you, and it's not going to be the concerned trolls on Twitter. It's going to be the people that can really ruin your life, that can put you away for 100 years, that can, they can really fuck you up. So how do we de-risk, and how do we make it so, we're just not massive targets?
Yeah, it's almost like now that it's becoming more successful and now that it's becoming more known, it's awesome, but it's also can be seen as a problem. And I think you're right in terms of timing. Like even in the little time that I've been around, I feel a big change in just, I don't know, the sentiment out there in the world. And
Yeah.
what we've seen from people, how quickly they'll just nod along and do as they're told and attack people they're told to attack without thinking. And so
Absolutely.
you can be logical about it and say, right, you and TDev have created a platform that people can use to protect their privacy and potentially save their lives, because they don't then have people tracking them who could hurt them
Right.
or steal from them or worse. So you could look at it like that, and you could say that to somebody. But if they're told on BBC News, orange bad and red bad, they'll just sort of jump to it and be like, okay, these people are evil. And nobody's saying anything about this dev who's been caught up with all this Tornado Cash stuff. Nobody says anything really about Assange or...
Yeah, he's being held in the Netherlands, without charge for, it's been months now. And it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And you're right, exactly. No one's talking about Assange, and he's one of the most important people of our generation, and he's probably going to get fucked.
Yep, almost certainly.
Yeah.
All right, so you're trying to preempt that, obviously.
Yep.
If/when you pull that off, is there a way that you can still collect fees even though you're not that central point? Because obviously you've got to have some funding to continue development. This is like a plan you've put together from the beginning. It's something where it's like, well, obviously you've got to collect some fees. Is that still possible? Or...
Yes, it's possible, though I will note that the Whirlpool fee primarily isn't for funding us. It's primarily used as spam prevention and as a way to make attacking Whirlpool cost something, right? So if you wanted to Sybil attack Whirlpool, you would have to pay multiple fees to enter, so it wouldn't be a free attack. So really all CoinJoin has a fee associated to it, whether it be Join Market, Wasabi, Whirlpool, or whatever. Mostly because you have to implement at least a small catch mechanism to stop spam. But yes, the idea of the Whirlpool decentralized coordinator is that there will be still one liquidity pool. So liquidity will not be split. And this is a major difference between how Whirlpool works and how Wasabi currently works in terms of having multiple coordinators. Once Wasabi implemented the chain analysis and blacklists, their go-to response was, well, don't use a default coordinator then, right? That's you probably saw that all over the place. Yeah, don't use that. Well, if you don't use the default coordinator, you're not getting the same liquidity that you have in that Wasabi coordinator. You have to go to a different coordinator. And there are no other coordinators that have that level of liquidity. And it would be the same thing with Whirlpool if we did it that way, right? Like Samourai would have the largest amount of liquidity and Joe Blow would have like 0.04 Bitcoin and 3 users. So if you're going to jump liquidity pools and you were mixing with, hundreds of thousands, and now you're mixing with 3, that's a big privacy loss. So we don't want to do that. We need to do it in a way that there's one liquidity pool that doesn't change, that spam prevention fees are still in place. And yes, we can do that. Think of it like, a Bitcoin mempool, right? There isn't one Bitcoin mempool. Every node has its own mempool, but they all agree on what's in the mempool. And there's only one blockchain, So it kind of parallels to that. There's going to be multiple coordination pools, but they all agree and they all have the same rules.
Okay. Yeah, it just, looking at the trade-offs of having these multiple pools, it just seems completely illogical to me. It's like...
It is.
Why would you go into a pool where you're hiding in a smaller crowd? No one's going to do it. So the incentive isn't there for someone else to run one, which means you're always going to have the same one, which means you're going to be tracked and chain analysis and everything else. And it's just like, it just doesn't make sense. And that's not coming from like, oh, I'm a dev and I can look into this and all the cryptography is this and that. It's just basic fucking obvious stuff of like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's how the world works. Like people converge on a standard, right? VHS won over Betamax, for example. DVDs won over mini disc. People are going to converge onto one thing, and you're not going to, want to split liquidity and your anonymity amongst small coordinators, right? Just like a production company is not going to want to make some DVDs, some VHS, some mini disc, some Betamax. They're going to want to choose one, right? Because it's more cost effective for them. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's just how it works in reality, So figuring out a way to make sure that users aren't impacted, number one, right? Like users can have no idea about the coordination side, whether it's, one server or multiple servers. They just open Whirlpool and it works. So that has to be true. It also has to be true that users who do care can run a coordinator server if they want to, and do so in a way that they don't have to be a tech genius, right? Basically turn it on, plug it in, and it connects to the wider Whirlpool network of other coordinators, and make it seamless and easy and without friction at all for a user to change coordinators. If they even have to make that decision, maybe it just happens automatically. Maybe it's like, again, parallel to how Bitcoin works. Right? When you're connecting to a Bitcoin node in a, what's it called? A Light wallet, for example, you're not choosing which Bitcoin node to connect to. You're just listening for any Bitcoin D gossip and taking that in. And it could potentially work that way as well. So it's going to be really simple. It's going to be a change that most people don't notice, but the people who care about this type of stuff, the people who are looking, are going to be able to run their own coordination server, aid decentralization in that way. And hell, we might even make it part of the Dojo package. So when you get Dojo, you just automatically get a Whirlpool coordination server that runs over a Tor hidden service automatically. So I haven't made that decision yet, but I could foresee that happening, where you don't even have to know anything about it. It's just part of the stack.
So in theory, if you were to do it, if I'm running a Ronin Dojo Tanto, for example, I then would be my own client. Is that what you're saying?
You would be one of many Whirlpool coordinators, right? So you have your Ronin Dojo, and then there's an update. And again, this is we haven't really talked about
I get that.
Distributing it this way, but I can foresee it something like this happening, where we'd say, okay, as of this version of Dojo, not only are you going to have a Bitcoin D, not only are you going to have a indexer, right? Because that's part of what's, packaged in Dojo. Not only are you going to have a block explorer, we're also going to throw in a Whirlpool coordinator, and anyone who updates and has a Dojo passage version is also going to be a Whirlpool coordinator, whether they know it or not. They can turn it off, but by default it's turned on. So then all of a sudden you go from having one coordinator to, thousands.
That would be incredible. And you were talking earlier about the Sybil resistance aspect, about having the fees, and so people don't spam, basically. It was something I got caught out with very early days, because I was fucking around with all this stuff and had no idea what I was doing. Still don't, but maybe I understand it a bit more. But I remember doing it, and I was putting in a load of different UTXOs, and I was like, it's so much cheaper if I just put these all through as one.
Right.
And then I was like, and it was considerably cheaper, I think, as well, because the fees were quite high at the time. And I was like, this is a lot. So anyway, so I did it. And then I was looking back through all my stuff, and I was like, you silly cunt. What you've done here is you've just tied all of these together before going in. Literally, within the last couple of weeks, I was like, fucking if I could go back in time, I would not have done that. So stupid. So I was wondering, is there a way that, for example, if this is the flow, you don't have Samourai wallet, you then get it. You send a load of your UTXOs in there, and that one might be from an exchange and one might be peer-to-peer and whatever. One's from earning some Bitcoin. And then you say, right, now I'm going to enter the pool. The smart thing I should have done would have been send one single UTXO in.
Yeah, one at a time.
But my question is, is there a way you could send them all in at the same time, but rather than it just being me sending, let's say, 3 UTXOs, you could have 100 people who all send all their UTXOs in one, so it saves on the fees. Yeah. Is that possible?
Yeah, multi-party TX0.
Okay, is that, you've done it already, or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have. Yes. So that's in Samourai lingo internally, we call that multi-party TX0, and that's going to be huge, because what it, as you already kind of described to your listeners, you're going to be able to enter into a TX0, into a pool, with other people. So the assumption right now is that TX0 that you make is one person, right? There's only one entity making a TX0. And whatever inputs belong to that TX0 belong to that entity. Now, you're not going to be able to track those inputs going forward after Whirlpool. But as you noted, you'd be able to say, well, this person, gambled at this place, and that's where he got this input from, and he bought this input on Coinbase. So we know that this Coinbase user is this gambler, and we can tie that together. Oh, and because we're chain analysis, we have contract with Coinbase where they have to share data with us. So now we know exactly who this gambler is, right? So that's the danger in merging inputs, whether it be a Whirlpool transaction or any transaction. That's just how the Bitcoin UTXO model is. What the multi-party TX0 does is breaks that assumption. You will no longer be able to look at a TX0 and say, that's one entity. That could be more than one entity. Yeah, so that's funny you bring that up. Yeah, we have been working on it. In fact, it might actually be done just pending UI to be put into the wallet.
Yeah, that would be such a big one because if you don't think that through, and I mean, just like a normal new user isn't probably going to think that through, and I mean, I'm evidence of that. And so what I actually did is I ended up hurting my privacy by trying to improve it because although it's like really basic what I'd done before, what I had done is I had like separate wallets for different exchanges and different places. And so I had actually just a shitload of ledgers where I would send anything from there that goes to that one. And then I labeled them. And then what I did is I combined them all.
Right.
So what I did is I just fucked myself just because I didn't know what I was doing. So I think that would probably be a massive step because I'm probably not the only person who's dumb enough to do that.
Yeah, no, it's something we get asked all the time. So a small percentage of people who use the wallet, who use the software, is going to question that, right? And say, well, actually, maybe I should find out whether I'm going to do something bad by merging all of these things together. Most people aren't going to ask, and they're just going to do it. Small percentage is going to ask, and they do. And we always tell them, well, it's something that you have to think about for yourself, that we can't give you a generic answer because it might be just fine for you to merge, those inputs, right? So here's an example. If you would have, the way you were doing things, right, as you described them, was completely fine, right? You would have different ledgers, and those ledgers essentially had their own identity, right? Because all of the inputs were coming from similar or one source. Right. So, okay, all my Coinbase buys are going right to this wallet. So no matter what I do with this wallet, this is the Coinbase wallet. Right. And then this is my gambling wallet. Right. So that's all good. The issue, of course, comes in when you then merge these separate identities into a new identity, one identity, and you're giving the world that information because it's on the blockchain saying that this identity is now been blended and merged is the same as this other identity. Here's a new one that we can track.
Yeah.
So the people that ask, they come in and we tell them, it really depends. If you were going to merge all of the inputs from your Coinbase, identity, it's not really a big deal, or it's not as big of a deal. Let's put it that way. Coinbase already knows. So if you're hiding from Coinbase, they know. You may not want it on the blockchain, but it may not be a big deal for you, and it will save you on fees. So if you're, one identity going all in, okay, but you really don't want to do it with multiple identities. So I don't want to mix the coin that I earn through, cam whoring, and I don't want to merge that with the coin that I'm donating to my church, right?
Yeah, they don't mix.
They don't mix. You don't want to do that. So this will help the majority of people. This multi-party TX0 will help the majority of people who don't know, that complexity of Bitcoin UTXO model, which most people don't, and aren't going to ask about it. So it's gonna help the most amount of people, we think.
I think so. If I could go back in time, if someone said, "Oh, here's a time machine, you can do one thing," I wouldn't go and look at the lottery numbers. I wouldn't go back and kill Hitler. I'd go back and I'd punch myself in the face so fucking hard for what I did with merging all of those. That'd be my first thing to do. But no, it's good to hear that that's going to change. How does that actually look in like a technical sense? If I'm creating that transaction with, my 3 UTXOs and then someone else is doing it and someone else is doing it. How is that coordinated? Does that just become one huge transaction that you guys have to put together with all the inputs that everyone puts in?
Right. I think the way it works is you are telling, so in the wallet you're saying, hey, I want to do a multi-party TX0 first of all, because you may not want to do that. And when you do that, when you say you want to do one of those, instead of your transaction being, broadcast and TX0'd immediately, it goes into a queue, like a waiting pool. And then at some interval, again, I don't know the exact details of the implementation that we have because I haven't put it into UI yet. But at some point, the pool, participants are chosen from that pool, and a TX0 is constructed. Yes, with the the signed inputs that have been provided. I believe it's the last person to enter that actually broadcasted or something like that. I would have to go back and check. But what's really cool is, even if you don't participate in a multi-party TX0,
throws question.
You do one of the regular ones. Both of them look exactly the same. Both the multi-party TX0 and the non-multi-party TX0 are going to look the same. So you won't actually be able to tell from the blockchain if this was a multi-party or single party. So the fingerprint of the TX0 is going to be changing slightly so it matches. And that's an important, important privacy tool, effective privacy tool as well. And it kind of works in like Stonewall works, right? So Stonewall has a specific fingerprint that's exactly the same as two-party Stonewall. Therefore, any one-party Stonewall could theoretically be a two-party Stonewall. And without any further information, you have to assume it is.
Yeah, so these assumptions that chain analysis would make just become harder and harder because
correct,
they're guessing anyway, but the percentage chance of them being right just continues to go down. And so at some point, they then can't really use that as a heuristic. Or if they do, it's just like it's complete fucking
it's flawed.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a flawed heuristic then at that point. Yeah. And that's a lot what we do is breaking heuristics, and undermining heuristics.
How much do you think they care about that? Someone like you and T-Dev and people who are like really deep in this stuff, you really care about breaking these links and thinking these things through. And obviously the chain analysis people who are on the other side of it, I assume they do as well. But how much do they actually care if they're right? Because they're probably going to get paid anyway, because not many people know what the fuck they're talking about. So if they just say, yeah, well, we can assume this. They're saying to a company, we can assume this, or a government or whoever they're being paid by, they can assume that this is just one person. The person isn't going to go, oh, well, actually, it might not be because it could be a multi-party payment, right? No one's going to fucking say that. So are they just going to carry on shilling something that doesn't work? Or will they just at some point, do you think, go, do you know what? We're just fucked. We don't know what's going on.
Yes and no. To some degree, you're right in terms of they don't care whether they're right or wrong. Largely one, because they operate a black box, right? They don't have to ever show their work. They just, they say this is this and that's that. So no one is really scrutinizing how they come to their decisions because they don't show their work. Like OXT research shows its work, right? It says this is exactly how we, analyze this. Chain analysis doesn't do that. So there's that. However, they have real contracts with real businesses. Right? Chain analysis doesn't provide any value to anyone. They provide a regulatory service that a real business that provides value has to engage in. Okay, so I'm using Coinbase as my exchange of example for this podcast. So Coinbase engages with chain analysis, for example, not because they really want to, but because they have to. Coinbase are in the business of making money, right? And in order to make money as an exchange, you have to offer your services to the widest net of people possible, right? You don't want to just have a small niche. You want everyone. What chain analysis, the information that chain analysis provides results directly in, one, them losing customers because they have to get rid of people they have to de-risk, and two, refusing new customers, saying, we can't have you because of whatever. With a error rate on chain analysis side of their heuristics of, 1%, maybe it doesn't really impact Coinbase very much. They're not losing that much business. The results aren't wrong. Joe Blow isn't getting flagged for something because, whatever. at a error rate of 10%, now that starts to magnify. Now it's not only, wrong at the person that should be targeted or, is going to be targeted, but it's like 3 rings back, 3 hops back. So Joe Blow now is impacted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as that starts to gnaw away at what the business can earn, they're going to have a problem with it. And they're going to say, hey, we think that these, the CEO's girlfriend's daughter got flagged. There's obviously something wrong with your heuristics. Fix them.
Mm-hmm.
We're turning away too much business. So yes, I think ultimately it will have an impact, whether you care about heuristics or not, because the heuristics that we're talking about are the fundamental, they're providing the fundamental business that Chainalysis provides. And if they're flawed, that's going to affect, the data that they're providing and the information they're providing. So that's on the business side. Now, what's really more important to me than that side is, this stuff is going to and has been used in a court of law and has been used as evidence against people that has resulted in them going to jail, going to prison. And the level of the court, people do care about the nitty-gritty details. You better believe it. Both attorneys are going to have their own expert witnesses, their own expert blockchain analysts, and they're going to fight over the probabilities of this heuristic versus this heuristic and why this one is flawed. And, you better freaking believe it. So not giving, not ceding that line and saying, the heuristic is the heuristic and that's just how it is, but actively working to build tools that undermine it and make it questionable, seriously questionable to be used, are going to have profound impacts in courts of law and will hopefully save innocent people from being thrown behind bars because of these pathetic heuristics that chain analysis relies on and has built a business on.
Yeah, and it's so important. I think it just doesn't get enough coverage, or maybe it's not understood quite how easy it is to be tripped up and how cunty, for lack of a better word, these chain analysis people are and how the courts are going to be and everyone else, because Bitcoin is sold as this freedom tool, and it definitely has the possibility to do that, but also can fuck you up badly, and it's there forever. And so without these sort of steps forward, I think, we go forward and we sort of look at the trajectory we're on, and it's really worrying to see what are we going to be pulled up in court for that we did 5 years ago or we're doing today. You're then in front of a judge and they're saying, right, well, chain analysis has said they think that this is linked to this, therefore you bought this online and that's now illegal and punishable by fuck knows what.
Yeah.
And it's there forever. And it's kind of, I think maybe people are overlooking how bad governments can be and just how many mistakes people are making. And then they're not extrapolating that out and thinking, I could be in a fucking jail cell.
Yeah, no, I don't think people really think about it as a possibility, just like the whole COVID thing came. Everyone was, I can't believe governments did that. I can't believe that, we all locked down. I can't, well, why not? Look at the trajectory of everything. Yeah, it was unprecedented, but it was definitely going to happen, and things are going to continue to escalate. And, this is, what you said, that Bitcoin can be dangerous. It's true. And it wasn't really as true early on in Bitcoin's life because there was really no KYC services that were, that you use to get Bitcoin, right? You get an exchange was, not regulated, to put it lightly. And it was easy to acquire Bitcoin from ATMs, from whatever, there was no KYC record. So you had the same on-chain privacy issues, the same UTXO model, but you were synonymous, right? No one knew that this Bitcoin address was associated with you as a person. Now that fundamentally is gone in Bitcoin. Almost all Bitcoin, that people are using come from a KYC regulated service, and they know exactly where to start and whose legal identity owns what, and using the same privacy issues in the UTXO model. they're able to, and the same heuristics and the same assumptions, they're able to follow forward through, with great, great confidence, the life of those Bitcoins, and what's really one of the reasons why we're so adamant on rejecting KYC sources of Bitcoin, because it's truly dangerous. It really is. It's creating like a panopticon of surveillance.
And it's recent, like you're saying. That's the thing, and it's the real taint. You might know, okay, this entity is associated with these other payments, but you didn't know who that entity was because there's nothing tying them. It's
exactly.
like no one's writing "my name's Max" on it. It's just no one fucking knows who you are. But like you say, now it's the norm. And when you're entering, when I was first told about Bitcoin, it was like, right, go to this exchange. This is how you buy it, blah, blah, blah. And it's only after being involved for a certain amount of time where you're like, that was stupid, but you don't know. And so that is the normal way people are coming in. So it is happening more and more. I wonder whether, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think someone had said, it may have even been you, if you're doing like a pay join, fees wise, it can actually be cheaper to make that payment. Is that right? Because what I'm wondering is, the current model is you make a payment, it's one UTXO or many UTXOs that you own, which are then being broken down. You have your change, and then you're paying for a service or product online. If you had it so that every payment was a pay join or something similar, would that not break all heuristics, like so that every single payment between different people is always a question mark of, well, how many people were involved in this? And how quickly would that then melt down this possibility for them to be like, oh, okay, we can track this person, because it would make everything a question mark. And the reason I'm asking about fees is if it was made that it was more efficient to do that, that's going to be what's going to make people start adopting it. Because unfortunately, like we just said, most people either don't think about the privacy at this point because they're just looking at Bitcoin as an investment, or they just don't care enough and they're maybe a little bit arrogant about how safe they're going to be in the future. Most people just don't care. But if you say to them, well, it's 10% cheaper and it's just then put into the flow of most wallets, then wouldn't that really quickly start to muddy the waters and make it to a point where not it's impossible, but it's much harder for everybody to be tracked?
Yeah. I understand the question. So PayJoin is a powerful tool. So it's called Stowaway in Samourai, and PayJoin in BTC Pay Server is the only other kind of place that has implemented it currently.
Mm-hmm.
It would fundamentally undermine the common ownership heuristic, which is a big one. So the common ownership heuristic says, the person that's making the transaction own all of the inputs on the left, right? All of the source inputs used to make the transaction. PayJoin undermines this by using inputs from multiple parties in the transaction. So yes, it would undermine that heuristic, and it would be an effective undermining of that heuristic. However, I don't think we can truly make send a pay join because it's interactive. You need the other person involved to say, these are the inputs that I can contribute to this transaction.
But do you? Because if a large proportion of payments are pay joins, then I always forget what things are called, but the one where you can do it yourself in Samourai, it looks the same as a pay join.
That's a Stonewall.
Okay.
Well, a pay join, that's a fake pay join, just looks like should look like a simple spend transaction. So what most transactions on the blockchain look like. That's where the power is. The power is the fact that PayJoin exists at all and Stowaway exists at all means that really any of those simple spend transactions, so transactions that have two outputs, right? Presumably a destination output and a change output. Any transaction that has two outputs could theoretically be a Stowaway or a PayJoin. That's already true.
Mm-hmm.
But, making all transactions a pay join, I don't think is necessarily feasible because there has to be coordination involved, right? Like if I want to make a pay join to you, we have to communicate in some way, whether it be through Sorbonne, that's how it works in Samourai, or whether it be you communicating with a server, which is how it works with BTC Pay Server. There has to be some way for you to communicate and say, look, these are the inputs that I have. what are your inputs, and this is what I want to make as an output, and we need to make a transaction together and sign it together in order for it to be broadcast. So there's too much interactivity between it, as opposed to me say like just sending to an address of yours, or me sending to your paynym. There's no interactivity there. But I think increasing pay join would be great. It would be very good. When we implemented Stowaway, before pay join was implemented anywhere, and our kind of model and thinking about it was it's a peer-to-peer tool, as opposed to a tool that's going to be used by merchants or whatever. It would be nice if they did, but we don't think so. So as a peer-to-peer tool, most peers or Samourai wallet peers aren't going to be running a BTC Pay server because there's a lot of technical, requirements involved. So how do we do it where they can use their wallet to make these transactions happen with each other, as opposed to using a web server and while they're paying a merchant? So the fundamental difference between Stowaway is that it's peer-to-peer. It's with you and a friend, you and me, and we use our wallet to do it, versus the BTC Pay server version, which is really a merchant has enabled it on their BTC Pay server, and you're going to pay join with that merchant.
Okay.
That's how they both work right now. I believe like Blue Wallet, for example, has the ability to pay join in Blue Wallet, but it's not how it works in Samourai. It's not like you, as a Blue Wallet user, you can pay join to another Blue Wallet user. No, they can read like the BTC Pay server QR code that says it's a pay join. So it's and as we've seen, unfortunately, it's been very little uptake on BTC Pay server user side, right? And merchants, I mean. And I've used many, I transact all the time, and I use BTC Pay server all the time, and I've never seen even the option to enable a pay join with any of the merchants that I've tried. So it's just the adoption isn't there on that end. We do know that it's used in Samourai. We don't know how much it's used, but there is a good following for people who are making stowaway payments. But it's a pretty limited or narrow use case, right? I have to want to send you, Max, in particular, Bitcoin in order to do a pay join with you, in order to do a stowaway with you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is there any other stuff that you think about, and outside of like Samourai, is there any other like tips that you have for anyone who's listening outside of just don't fucking go to Coinbase? Any things that you think people miss a lot and are like simple things that they can do to improve their privacy?
Well, honestly, I think if you're new into the space, or maybe if you've been here for a while and you just haven't taken the time to do this yet, really learning at a basic level how the UTXO model for Bitcoin works is really the first fundamental step you can take to improving your privacy, because you'll really understand. It's like the setup for everything that we're doing. If you understand the basic fundamentals of the UTXO model, you understand why the transactions work the way they work in Samourai implicitly, because you see it. It's very clear. And you start to really understand that I shouldn't be mixing sources here, or how transaction is going to look after I make it on the blockchain, and what that's going to tell anyone who might be looking. So really learning that. And we put a YouTube video, I think it's like 9 or 10 minutes long, about the UTXO model and how UTXOs work on our YouTube. I think it's called the Bitcoin Privacy Series. It's the first video number 0. And I recommend just starting there. The whole privacy series is excellent. They're short videos, but they really, by the end of it, you'll have a really solid understanding of basic Bitcoin privacy, and how to obtain basic Bitcoin privacy, and how to read a blockchain and use OXT and all this stuff. They're short 10-minute videos, but I highly recommend that. And then, just treasure your private data, and don't be so willing to give it up without a fight. If you really want to get Bitcoin, you might be thinking, well, maybe it's worth it. I'm just going to upload my ID, upload my passport, upload my selfie, whatever else you have to send them. It's worth it in the end, whatever. Really think long and hard about that, and fight for a better way, and try to find a better way. Because one of the single most powerful thing that they have is your identity attached to your spending habits. It's really unprecedented in the scope of that kind of data and that kind of surveillance, and the fact that it's all entirely public. Really understand that and understand the implications of that. And I think that's a good place to begin on your privacy journey, because then it's not just like, an ideological thing. It's a real practical thing. And you can see the real practical benefits of it. And it's a normal thing.
Yeah, and just like having those habits where you're not tripping yourself up is important. What do you think about some of the moves in the peer-to-peer space? Like, are you seeing anything that you think is promising? When I say peer-to-peer, I mean peer-to-peer trading, Bisq or Peach or RoboSats or any of these things, or any projects that you look at and you think, well, that's pretty promising.
I think I haven't used any of the ones that you mentioned. I've heard of Peach coming out. I think they're primarily Europe based.
You can use them in America.
Right. But
Yeah.
they themselves are based, I believe, in Switzerland, or they're essentially relying on Swiss law to deal with non KYC trades under 1,000 Swiss francs, I believe, something along those lines. And you see that a lot with the Swiss companies, because that's what their law says, that you can do these non KYC trades under 1,000, and that's cool. But it wasn't long ago that it was 10,000. So it's not unreasonable to think that in the next few years it's going to be 500, and then maybe it's going to be 250, and then maybe it's going to be 50. Right. So my point is, if you're relying on law, like, the Swiss law to provide, to make your business model work, you have to expect it's not gonna work as long as
forever.
you hope it's going to. Right. RoboSats is really interesting. I haven't played with it myself, only because I believe you need a Lightning wallet to deal with it. Right. So I haven't taken the time to do that yet, but I've been through the website. I think the way that that's set up is a lot more robust and resilient. It's not reliant on a single jurisdiction's legal code. It's truly peer-to-peer. So I think that's cool. But yeah, I haven't tried them all out. Once you've been in the space for a while, you build your own little networks for dealing with trading and having access to fiat when you need it, and your own little systems. And you don't talk about them for fear that they might go away, which they often do.
Yeah, you're exactly right. This is the thing. It's like, when exactly what you said, after you've been here for a while, you have people who want to buy and sell, and you've got friends and people you trust, and there's ways. And so these problems go away. But when you're getting new people involved, it's like, well, how do I buy some? It's like,
Right.
That's not so simple. And
well, the trick is turning them into what part of your network. Oh, you want to buy some? Well, I have some to sell.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I mean, if you're onboarding someone to Bitcoin and you're not willing to sell them some Bitcoin, you shouldn't be onboarding them. Like, if you're going to onboard somebody, sell them some.
I agree. Sometimes, though, I onboard people who they want to buy amounts that I can only dream of. And so then it makes it very difficult. And then even with the peer-to-peer stuff, it's like, well, listen, like, you can't buy that much today. Yeah, I think, if it's like a friend and they're like, oh, I want to buy $100 or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, sure, look, I'll sell you some. Right. And I think that's the best way in, and then teach them. But I had one more nerdy technical question that's been running through my head, and hopefully you can answer. I've been meaning to put my paynym online so people can send donations for the show. In the back of my head, there's just been this little nagging. I've been like, but if I post that up, will that not, because it's a very old wallet, I've had it for a long time, will that not somehow trip me up and somehow link my previous transactions or what I put in or out of Whirlpool or anything like that? And I keep thinking, well, would I not be better to have a separate paynym with a separate wallet, which is just for the show? Am I just being paranoid, or is there some way that I could fuck myself there?
No, with an asterisk, right? So no, just based on paynym, no. You're not gonna fuck yourself up, and you won't link anything to anyone by just receiving donations through your paynym. does it make sense to create a new paynym or a new wallet for a separate paynym for the show? Yeah, maybe it might, just from an organizational standpoint, and the fact that you might not want to use that old wallet anymore. But the issue will come down at time of spend. But it's not specific to paynym. It's just specific to any time you make a Bitcoin transaction, right? You have to consider where the inputs are coming from, and it doesn't have to screw you up. A paynym UTXO is no different from any other UTXO in your wallet, other than the fact that it's derived from the paynym instead of from the wallet seed. So it has you can use it in the exact same way as any other UTXO in your wallet. It will just say, this UTXO is from a paynym, and you can decide how you want to use it in your wallet. But it will not reveal Whirlpool, TX zeros unless you merge it with a toxic change output from Whirlpool.
Yeah.
At time of spend.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's just like any other transaction you'd receive. It doesn't
Right.
make any difference. They don't reveal anything. It's only if you then merge all those together to put through Whirlpool that then that person who sent you that transaction can be like, he's also put this, and this
Right.
through. And then they could start to...
Precisely.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. Because people ask...
Yeah, but it's true of any transaction. It's not specific to paynym. It's just how Bitcoin works, right? So
Yeah.
So it's completely safe to use to share the payment code publicly. I mean, that is the reason it was designed. Like that's why Bit47 was built, was for static donation addresses. So it's really the ideal use case.
Yeah. I think it was just me overthinking it and being like, I constantly trip myself up with stuff. And I was like, well, I'm just going to ask anyway. So that's fine. I'm going to post that up then, because it just does make it so much more simple. And especially with like what's happening with Lincoinpool, and a lot of the guys who are in our groups are starting to use paynyms literally from that. They're like, I'm moving over to Lincoinpool because we like what they're doing. And they use paynym. So now they're starting to use those as well, which... I still can't believe no one else has jumped on board with that. It seems so fucking obvious to have that as a payout.
I know. I know. If you're doing any sort of regular payouts to the same person, it's a no-brainer. It's such a no-brainer.
It just saves so much time as well, like going in and having to manually change it. And I can't tell you how many people I know who mine, and they're like into their privacy, and I'm like, so how do you deal with this? And they're like, it's too much effort. I just use the same address. I just leave it in there. I'm like, you fucking retard. Like, how hard would it be for you to just use Lincoin, do that? Like, it's not. Do you think others will jump on board? Is it just like they can't be asked, or is there a legitimate reason? Because Mehdi seemed to think it was easy. He was like, I said, did you speak to Samourai? And he was like, no, I just looked through all their documentation. It was very well organized and we just did it. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me like a few years ago, I would have said, it's kind of a challenge to implement BIP47. It's not really easy stuff. There's a lot of cryptography, but these days we have libraries out there that we've put out. There's libraries out there that other people have made in JavaScript and Flutter and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's easy now. There's really no excuse not to do it. I don't know. Maybe it's they looked at it a few years ago and said, it's too much work, and then never thought of doing it again. I'm not sure, but they're definitely missing a trick. It's a fantastic implementation of stealth addresses for Bitcoin. It's a huge UX win whenever you're dealing with regular and repeat payouts. It's a UX win when dealing with donations. And just, not having to interact and ask someone for an address, and not having to provide a service in Xpub in order for them to generate fresh addresses. It's just it's a great feature. And Sparrow implemented it, which was nice to see. For a very long time, we were the only one. We implemented in 2016 for reference, so it's been a few years where, it's the only one. But yeah, hopefully the newer wallet, and Stack Wallet, which is a new multi-coin wallet on the scene, have implemented it and I think they're in testing right now. It should be out fairly soon with paynym support, and that's going to be available on iOS as well. So they'll be the only on iOS.
Okay, yeah. Q&A mentioned this in our monthly call. I think he said Stack Wallet are using BDK, and because this new Straylight thing is written in Rust, it means they can also implement. They could also have Whirlpool as well as Foundation, possibly. I think that's what he said, but I may be getting confused.
Yeah, I think they're looking at it. The Stack Wallet guys are cool. They're nice guys, and they basically came to us and said, "Look, we want to implement paynyms and possibly Whirlpool." So we said, "Okay, well, whatever you need. If you need any help on anything, just let us know." And good luck. So yeah, they're building. I think they're a pretty small team, but they're building, and that's cool. I have doubts that they'll be able to release with Whirlpool on iOS personally, but if they do, that'll be huge. That'll be Whirlpool on iOS it will be massive. So good luck to them. But all that to say that it's growing, and people, the new wallets that are coming on the scene, I think, are recognizing the importance of paynyms of BIP47, and they're looking at what we've done because we did it first, and they're looking at the paynym directory, which is what gives you the bot image and the bot name, and it's useful to have a public directory of these things because they're designed to be shared publicly. One, and two, they're kind of long and unwieldy by themselves. So being able to shorten that and look up and whatever is useful. So they're tying into that. So it's really, the ecosystem is being built out.
Yeah, it's really good to see. If it becomes possible for iOS users to have Whirlpool, this is going to be pretty fucking massive. Q&A seemed to think he seemed pretty confident, more confident than you sound on it happening. I don't know why. He wanted to bet that Whirlpool capacity is going to be at least 10,000 by the end of the year. Do you think that's overly bullish, or do you feel the same?
What's Whirlpool capacity at now?
Like 6,000 something?
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, 6,000, right? 6,000 something.
Ish.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised. If we continue at the trajectory that we ended the year on, 10,000 is easily in the cards, with or without iPhone, I think. I'm more bearish on the prospects of getting Whirlpool into the Apple store. I would, very happily be wrong on that. I would like to be wrong on that. I don't know. I think that they're going to have a problem with it. But if they don't, I think it's going to be huge. There's plenty of iOS users out there who have, been asking for, access to these types of features. We're obviously an Android only wallet, so we can't serve them. Someone has to. Many of them have gotten themselves a dedicated Android phone in desperation and use Samourai and stuff. But having something native is going to be great.
I think so. I mean, so many people that I try and get using Samourai and they're using iOS, they will get another phone and they will do it if they're really interested. But it's just that one extra hurdle.
Yeah.
A lot of people, myself included, kind of just use one NIM phone and one more doxed phone because it just makes things a bit more simple. I like to have that separation and just like have Calyx running or Graphene running on one of these de-Googled things and separate things out. And just, I don't know, it makes it a little bit easier to think through. Having it on one device would be useful for most people who aren't maybe quite so deep into it and don't want to have multiple devices.
Yeah, or just, need to put their toe in the water before they can even start thinking about that, right? Like, maybe they will become one of those people that have multiple devices, but they won't know it until they dip their toe in the water by trying it out, on their main device and saying, oh, okay, I can get behind this. I need a whole different thing,
Stealth mode, very cool. We were just talking about that yesterday. Yeah. Nice to see that coming back.
Yes, very happy for that to be back.
It's very cool. I had a question on it that came up from Antimus. He was saying, obviously, if you've got the stealth mode on there and you're going through a border, for example, what about your files, like your backup files, etc.? If you've say you're using the calculator one, you've got to press equals or whatever it is, and then it opens Samurai. What if that Border Patrol person is like a little bit savvy? Could they are you still going to be able to see that your files are on there and therefore be like, oh, okay, there's obviously something here they're going to have to delete before going through? Or like, how does that side of it work?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's from the first version of stealth mode, which was in 2015. It was designed as a casual kind of protection, right? So a protection from casual searches, not even really a border guard, more like a significant other or, your kid or, someone who you don't want to know that you have a Bitcoin wallet on your phone. It will not hide the files. So if someone is going to be going through your phone and looking at, the file system, they'll still see the samurai.txt backup.
Mm-hmm.
If your intention is to cross the border and you suspect that the Border Patrol is going to force you to unlock your phone and give it to them, I would suggest uninstalling at the very least. But really, I would wipe the entire phone and just cross with a completely wiped phone. Personally, if you suspect that, there's really you have to be in a pretty hostile country if you suspect that they're going to take your phone from you for no reason whatsoever, right? And force you to unlock it in front of them. If that is a concern, though, I would take it seriously, and I would not cross the border with anything on the phone, because they're going to clone it. They're going to clone it and then give you back your phone and then go through it at their leisure. So yeah, it's if that's your concern, you have deeper issues than just your Samurai wallet. You have everything on there needs to be gone.
Yeah, I think it's not for most people to worry about. I just always like to think about those extreme cases. And what actually came up from that conversation was, well, you can just wipe everything on the phone. If you are using graphene or Calyx, you can use like this panic mode. So
That's
you
right.
can set it up. It deletes certain apps or files or whatever. So you could do the panic mode. But then, like you say, if you just take it off the phone anyway, if you're preempting it. But these are extreme cases. And just for the normal user, for example, someone wants to rob you and they suspect, you might have some Bitcoin or whatever, and then it's like, I don't have any app on my phone. They just see a calculator or a VPN. I think that's really its main use, isn't it?
Exactly. It's for people who, it's not a sophisticated hiding protection, right? It's from casual searches, so someone flicking through your apps, basically looking through and saying, okay, what do you have here? Nothing of interest. Now, the first version of stealth mode was actually paired with a second sadly removed functionality called remote wipe. The use case of this was closer to the robbing situation that you just suggested, where your phone is stolen from you. You realize it. One protection is that it's in stealth mode, so they can't see it easily. But you want to get rid of that wallet. You don't have the phone in your possession anymore, but you don't want that wallet on that device anymore, right? You could send a remote SMS command to your phone that would actually delete the wallet.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was an awesome feature, and it kind of paired really nicely with stealth mode.
Who fucked that up then? Google?
Yeah, Google.
For fuck's sake. This is too cool. It needs to be taken out.
That was in the first version, man. That was in the first version of Samurai. And it was there for a while until I think 2018 or something.
So with features like that, I'm probably ignorant here, but so Google say, it's too cool, it's too James Bondy, you can't have that. So you've got to take it out so that you can still be in the Play Store. But
That's right.
If you're downloading an APK directly from your site, could you not have it so that there's the APK version, the non-Google fucked side, and that being separate, so that if someone wants these cool features, you could still have them, but you just can't if you want to be cucked by Google? Is that possible, or is it just too much work?
So, it's kind of complicated. At the time, the decision came down from the Google Play Store that said, if you want to be listed in the Play Store, you have to get rid of these features. It wasn't just us they targeted. I mean, there was a lot of apps that had to change. Yes, you could do that, and we did do that. we had the Google banned version of the APK. And you could get that from the website or the GitHub at the time. The issue came one into maintenance, so maintaining two separate, kind of code bases, branches of the code, one that's Play Store and one that's direct APK. And when they differ, it's an added challenge, especially when you have a really small team. So we did it, but it wasn't particularly fun to do, and it didn't stay up to date with the Google version. So we kind of stopped doing that. But later, like maybe a year after we got the memo from Google Play, Android was changed at the changes were made at the fundamental Android layer that made it impossible to do it anyway. So
okay,
we wouldn't be able to do it even by providing an APK. And it just kind of shows you how much influence Google really has in Android development. It's their separate project. It's owned by Google, but they're separate projects. But what Google wants, Google's going to get. So what we see happening in the Play Store, policy-wise, will eventually, trickle its way down into the base Android layer itself to enforce Google's will.
Okay. Final nerdy sort of tangent for you before I let you go and get on with important things. If that was the case, and so Google becomes more and more of a pain in the arse, they keep making it more and more difficult for privacy and freedom. Do you think there's going to be a point where, rather than just having like de-Googled phones, that maybe either that's not going to be possible, or that a new handset provider comes out to serve the people who want privacy?
Well, there have been attempts at handheld providers coming out that for people that want privacy. It's always niche. The privacy kind of phone aspect is a niche thing. I think what's likely to happen more so than a new handset provider is a new, a fork of Android that has, backing behind it. If maybe Google goes a bit too far, a fork of Android with corporate competitors behind it might have legs, and we'll see. But, as long as some options out there exist in terms of de-Googled, Android phones, for example, a opportunity exists for those who are seeking privacy. As long as you can still, flash a phone with a different operating system, there's a hope for you. And it might be niche, it might not be accepted, in the mainstream, but that's okay. You do what you have to do. I hope it doesn't go that way and that far. I think what Google decides, policy wise, in terms of censorship and this and that, won't impact Android itself specifically. Like I said before, it will trickle down. But I think that if the Android project were to overstep and just do something really egregious, a competing fork would show up, because that's just how things have gone in the world of software for eternity. That's just how the greatest projects are like kind of made in spite,
like BTC Pay,
right? The greatest projects often are really have contentious births, and are made out of spite and a will to prove someone wrong, and so I think that's the most likely thing to happen. And maybe a handset provider comes out, but that's such an expensive business. You have to have some serious capital, so you have to be a big company to really compete with Apple and Google,
Yeah. Well, Samourai, thanks so much again for answering my stupid questions and coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and everything you guys are doing.
Oh, not stupid at all. It's been a good chat.
It's been good to catch up, and some of these features that we've talked about today, the ones that are already out and the ones that are hopefully coming soon, it's pretty exciting. So thanks for all you guys are doing. It's pretty much the only thing that gives me hope out there. And when people are saying, "Oh, you can't use Bitcoin privately, don't even bother," then I just can say, "Well, look at what Samourai are doing." So I appreciate it.
Definitely, man. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. Nice to talk to you again, and good to be here.
Cool. Well, we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me. I'll try and help in any way I can. You can find us at ungovernablemisfits.com. If you haven't already checked out the website, we have loads of other podcasts, episodes, shorts, and much, much more. Stay ungovernable.